What's going on YouTube? So in today's video, I'm going to be telling you all why it is never too late to start boxing, even if you are looking to compete. So a little bit about me, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I started boxing in order to fight in 2021 in December of that year at the age of 33 years old. Had my first fight in October of 2022. And then I fought again in May of 2023 when I was 34 years old. Won my first fight by decision, second fight by knockout. So a lot of people think, it's too late for me to get involved in boxing. It's too late for me to compete. Now, yes, if you're looking to become a world champion, you start training in your 30s, then it is too late for that just because you're going to be going up against the best people in the world. Well, first you have to even get to that stage, which is going to be extremely difficult, pretty much impossible to get there. But if you're looking to just get into the sport for more than just fitness and you want to get into the sport in order to compete at the amateur level, then it is not too late. Now, I did not compete in the Masters division because I was still too young for that. I think Masters division for USA Boxing starts at 35. I'm 35 now, but for my first two fights, I was 33 and 34. So I wasn't old enough to get into the Masters division. And I know when I fought in May of 2023, I believe the guy I fought was 27 years old. So, be aware you are going to be fighting some people that may be in their prime, fitness wise. But that should not stop you from competing. Competing is about, learning, also about winning. We obviously want to win, but if you do take a loss, then take that loss as a learning lesson, learn from it, and get back in there. Now, for me, boxing was something that I always loved growing up. Growing up in St. Louis, there was not any boxing gyms near me, so I couldn't get involved in it. So I would just always, watch fighters, watch fights, and say, "Oh man, I wish I can do that." Well, I finally found a boxing gym when I moved to Florida. Well, shortly after I moved to Florida, a couple years after, and I started training, I committed to saying, "Hey, I'm going to train to have at least one amateur boxing fight, so that way I can say that I did it, and that way that will be off of my bucket list." So I'm going to give you all some tips on how to start boxing in order to fight, in order to compete if you are older. So I have a list of things that I've written down in my notebook here. So if you all see me looking down, I'm just making sure I don't miss anything on my list. So first thing I have is take the time to learn the fundamentals. Boxing is called the sweet science for a reason. It's not just going in there and fighting and just throwing hands. It's not a street fight. It is a sweet science. Everything you do in there needs to be calculated, from your footwork, from your head movement, your defense, your angles. Everything is calculated. It's all a science. And with any sport that you've done, let's say you've played football, let's say you've played basketball, any sport, you don't directly go into competition or go into scrimmaging. You have to practice. So, practice is going to be very important with boxing. When you're going over things with a coach, when they're showing you things, you should not just be practicing that inside the gym, but you also need to be working on that outside of the gym on your own free time. Remember, you're starting boxing late, so time is not on your side here. The more hours you can put in, the more you're going to get out of this. Number two, I have improved your conditioning. Now, a lot of times people underestimate the conditioning involved with boxing. It is by far the hardest thing that I've done conditioning wise, because when you actually get in there for sparring and things like that, those 2 minutes or 3 minute rounds, however many minutes you're doing, I've done up to 5 or 6 minute rounds at a time. Those feel like an eternity because now you have somebody that you're going against. And if they're in great shape, you have to be able to move with them. You have to be able to throw with them. And you do not want to be the guy in sparring or a fight that gets tired, because once you get tired in there, it's going to be very bad for you. Now, obviously, if it's sparring, hopefully your sparring partner is generous enough to not try to kill you in the ring. But if you're in a fight, if you're in a match and you get tired, then your opponent is going to knock you out. And the chances of them succeeding when you're tired is going to be more likely, or the ref is going to stop it, give you an 8 count. If you do not make the 8 count, then that fight is going to be over. So ways you can improve your conditioning, we see a lot of fighters doing roll work. Roll work is beneficial. I did it myself, but I think it's very important that you mix in sprints. I don't see a lot of guys mixing in their sprints. The fighters that I work with, I have them sprint as well, because that's part of your anaerobic conditioning. And in amateur boxing, you have 2 minute rounds. So it's very high pace, very intense. You're throwing for the entire time. It's not like professional boxing where these guys have 12 rounds, so they can take their time in order to fill each other out, in order to download the data of what their opponent is doing. But in amateur boxing, you have to go, because you have 6 minutes in order to either get a knockout or to impress the judges enough in order to get the win. Now, that anaerobic conditioning is going to play a vital role when you are in exchanges in your fight. All right, so that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 for you all: study the best fighters. Now, emphasis on the word the best, because in your mind, even though you're not going to fight to be a world champion, you should want to emulate what the best guys are doing. Look at their training routine, look at their conditioning. We have social media now, so you can see so much on social media of how these guys train. Now, they're obviously not going to show everything, because they don't want their opponents knowing all the tools in their toolbox, but you will get a very good idea of how they train and how to kind of start bumping your training up and emulating a lot of the things that they are doing for success. Now, best fighters. Now, guys that are not taking the sport serious, guys that are on social media just running their mouth, going back and forth, stay far away from that content. All right, next up on the list, this would be number 4. Always look to improve your skills. So what I mean by that, don't just work on things in the gym when a coach is watching you. When you're at home, I tell people this all the time: you can do shadow boxing anywhere. So your shadow boxing, you can change it up. You can have days where you're working on technique. You can have days where you're working on conditioning. Have days where you're working on footwork and defense, but you can mix things up, and you can do this literally anywhere. So why not work on it? And the best of the best shadow box all the time, because that's a way that you're going to improve your skills. Once again, as I said earlier, time is not on your side. So the more hours you can get in of practicing and working on your skills, the better off you're going to be. And this is also going to help shorten the learning curve for you, because as you work on things yourself in the mirror, you can start to see mistakes and start to prevent them from the next time you have a training session with your coach. All right, next up, number 5, improve your nutrition. Now, when you decide, well, when you and your coach agree on when you're going to fight, at what weight you're going to fight at, you want to be able to have a fight camp. You don't want to have a fat camp. So you don't want to have to lose 30 to 40 pounds, because that's going to impact your training. Now you're focused on losing weight more than you're focused on improving your skills. Find the weight that you and your coach agree that you're going to fight at, and try to stay within 10 to 15 pounds of that weight. So that way, when your fight camp starts and you're preparing for that fight, you can still focus on your skills, and your weight is going to come down, because your training sessions are going to be more intense. And then you can start decreasing the portion sizes of your food. That way, your focus is strictly on boxing, and the weight will start to come off. But if you're 30 pounds over, one, you're going to come into a fight drained, so your performance is already going to be impacted. You're not going to be at full strength. And if you're older, your recovery is going to be very, very difficult. So I do not recommend that at all. Get within 10 to 15 pounds of the weight you want to fight at. All right, next tip we have here. Tip number 6 is going to be stretch daily. And what this is going to do is going to help prevent injuries. So throughout my time training, sparring, getting ready for fights, I had tennis elbow really, really bad. And I had it in the past from lifting weights back when I was getting ready to compete in bodybuilding. So it flared back up. And I also, prior to boxing, I had a partial tear in my bicep that I had to go through 6 months of physical therapy for that. Now, when I was boxing, I was feeling good, but I was not stretching like I needed to. I was just doing, the quick stretches you do when you're younger just to get loose and just get right out there. And I paid for it in training because I was dealing with a nagging injury of the tennis elbow. I had things going on with my Achilles, just different things that could have been prevented or at least minimized had I implemented stretching longer and more frequently. So I recommend that you all stretch every day, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes per day. On your days where you're training, I would say stretch for 20 minutes, really take out that time to make sure that your body is good and that you're feeling good and to prevent injuries later on down the road. And then the final tip I have for you all is to stay hydrated and be sure to get rest. Now, water, please drink water. I see people, working out, they're drinking energy drinks, they're drinking Prime. That is not giving you hydration. Not saying anything bad about Prime or energy drinks. I'm just saying for your workout specifically, if you're looking to fight, you need to be drinking water in order to stay hydrated. When you're fighting and you're in the corner, or when you're sparring and you go to your corner, your coach is going to be giving you water. They're not going to be giving you an energy drink. There is a reason for that. So just get used to staying hydrated. Water is going to be the best thing for you, and sleep. Even if you're younger, sleep is important, but definitely since this video was catered to people that are, older. I say older, I'm not talking about like somebody that's 60 or 70 years old. I'm just saying a lot of times people start boxing at 8 years old, but some people want to start in their 20s or their 30s. So that's what I consider older when I say that. So your body is going to need rest. Like you're not going to be able to be up late, getting 4 hours of sleep and going to the gym and able to maximize your performance. That is going to catch up with you, and lack of rest could also be a reason that you get injured. So that's why you also need sleep. You need that recovery, and you need it for performance, and you just need it so you have everything in place when you are in that ring and that you are not slow to react or anything like that. So it is not too late for you to start boxing. Do not think that. I hope people found this video helpful, especially if you're looking to compete. And even if you aren't looking to compete, it's still never too late to start boxing. It's great for fitness. I see people of all ages still boxing, hitting the bag, working out. In person, I've seen people that are literally 70 years old that are still boxing. They aren't competing, obviously, but they still train it just because they love the sport and it's a great workout. So if you have any questions, please leave them below. Please share the video. I'm almost to 10,000 subscribers. I appreciate you all for all the support, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.